Besides a financial advisor, who do you need on your team as you build wealth? Welcome to Beyond the Advisor, the show where we gather members of Gatewood's team of diverse specialists to break down complex financial planning questions. Our goal is to provide education to families and business owners that empowers them to build their wealth with purpose and confidence.
Nina, Breen, first podcast. We're here.
We are here.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about you?
Absolutely. So I have been with Gatewood since August of 2019. I am our first senior wealth planner.
Big deal.
Yeah. So I've learned a few things along the way. I've accumulated some knowledge for sure, but I work with our families and really in the complex state. So as wealth builds, it becomes more complex. So I help a lot of our families navigate that. And with that comes business owners as well. So just helping families on their path to becoming and remaining financially self-reliant.
Yeah.
And what do you do?
Micah Alsobrook. You pronounced it correctly. I've been at Gatewood for right at about 2 years. I've been in the retirement planner employee benefit space for about 15. My role at the firm is working with business owners and executives to help them manage their company retirement plans. Also, I work with the employees within those retirement plans, which is a huge thing I like about my role is I don't just get to work with the business owner and the executive team, but I get to rub shoulders with the rank and file employees as well. So I'm excited for our conversation today because we're coming at it from two different perspectives a little bit, but I think there's a lot of overlap.
Merging the worlds.
Exactly. So I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
I'm going to pull out a random question.
Wonderful.
No pressure.
Nope.
First podcast. All right.
Did we say it's our first?
Did we mention that? Okay. Nina, you work with a lot of successful households and business owners. What's a financial misconception you find yourself correcting most often with people who are otherwise very successful?
Okay, great question. I think the most common one is holding the right amount of cash. I think it's natural for a lot of business owners to hold on either end of the spectrum. So if they, some run it really skim and don't have a whole lot of cash set aside, they're just reinvesting everything in the business. Others probably hold a little too much. So really trying to be thoughtful in designing that target is the goal because it's kind of like the Goldilocks of cash. You want to hold just enough. You don't want to hold too little or too much. And so working with the business owner to figure out what their expenses are, what their operating expenses look like each year so that we can create a target together and recommending a minimum amount that they hold.
That makes sense. And I can imagine, because I talk to a lot of business owners, they probably push back on some of those targets. When you're telling a business owner to hold 12 months of cash, as an example, how do you navigate that? How do you work with the business owner to land on an amount that they're comfortable with, that you think fits their plan?
Yeah. So in everything that we do here at Gatewood, we really try to first and foremost educate. So make sure they understand why we're recommending the amount that we're recommending. And that way they can first get the education so they know where we're coming from. And then it's always tailored to them specifically. So some clients just aren't going to sleep at night if they don't have a certain amount of cash. And so they'll hold more than our target. Others are more not a risk averse, they're risk on. So they're a lot more aggressive. They're fine holding less cash.
Got it. And can you talk about why we have that strategy? Like why cash?
Yeah.
What's the point of them having that big bucket of cash?
Yeah. So our philosophy is it's not about what you earn on cash that matters, but what cash allows you to earn on everything else.
I like that.
And so it's really about being prepared as well. So everything comes back to the financial plan, and having the right amount of cash makes you ready to weather a storm. So if, for a lot of times for our families, it's more about market volatility. So when you're young, you're starting in your career, you need a lot less cash than someone who's nearing and entering retirement. So when you're young, you're starting off, we say 3 to 6 months worth of fixed expenses is the cash target. And then that's, if you have a very solid job, you have very little risk of losing your employment, you can hold closer to the 3. If you're in an industry that's changing a lot and you're often jumping around, you might want to hold closer to the 6. And then for business owners, it's really 12 months worth of operating expenses so that, you always want to make sure that you can keep the lights on, that you can run payroll, that nothing going on around the business could impact that if you hold the right amount of cash. And then for clients who are nearing and entering retirement, we work toward 2 years. And the reason for that is the average bear market lasts 18 to 22 months. And so 2-year cash position can help you weather that storm so you don't have to sell equities while they're down.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to go to your question next.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So a lot of business owners think retirement plans are something you add once the business is fully mature. What do they misunderstand about the timing of starting the plan?
Ooh, I think this gets down to human nature, right? I always tell people it's like working out, right? You don't wait to work out until you're already in shape. The whole point of working out is to get in shape and to get energy and to improve yourself, right? Well, it's very similar with a 401k or a retirement plan for a business, right? In order for the business owner to reap the benefits, they have to start one. So the best day to start it is yesterday, but now is the second best time. So for us, I always try to elaborate on compound interest. Starting now is going to compound that much more over a long time horizon than if you wait until you're approaching retirement. As you know, that's often very expensive and very difficult to catch up on retirement savings if you wait too long. I think the other misconception is around how difficult it is to actually start one.
Yeah, it can be intimidating.
Exactly. And I try to demystify that because, believe it or not, the IRS has made it quite easy to start new plans.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I know they're not in the business of making things easy, but they did here, where they did provide some startup tax credits that can be pretty material for a small business to incentivize them to start a plan. And I would say on average for our clients, it's anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 in credits the first 1 to 3 years that they would start a plan. Which is usually more than enough to fully offset the cost to even start one. So it is significant. The second thing I would say is having a retirement plan communicates something to the talent pool that a lot of businesses are trying to hire for, right? It establishes that you're a credible business, that you want to stay, that you intend to grow, and that you want to attract top candidates. So I think the other thing is not downplaying that, right? And I actually have examples of this, right? Where a business owner, they bring up starting a 401k when they're trying to hire a candidate because the candidate brings it to them and says, I would work for you, but your benefits aren't on par with other competitors that I'm considering. And then they want to rush to start a plan. And had they had the conversation before, we would have had a longer time to plan for it and to set it up. So all that to say is, it's better to start early to build the foundation so that as the business scales and grows, that it's set up for success, especially when they start hiring employees.
Wonderful.
You ready for your next question?
I am.
Okay, let's keep it going. All right, question 3 for Nina. When someone's wealth is largely tied to their business, what blind spots tend to develop in their personal financial plan?
Okay, wonderful question. So this one is really going to be the blind spots, usually just reinvesting everything back into the business. So that's very tempting. You're a business owner, you control how you're building it, what you're building, and you control where the funds are going. So it's very attractive to be able to just reinvest everything back into the business. But if you're not taking some chips off the table along the way, all of a sudden when you go to sell the business or pass it to the next generation or whatever your succession plan may be, now all of a sudden you have to fully fund also your retirement. So you've been putting everything back into the business and you haven't been setting anything aside for yourself. And so now it's like, oh, we have to actually fund an entire retirement plan. And that can be intimidating and that can be hard to get started, especially if you've never invested in the market. You're switching from something that's very concentrated, but it's also in your control. So it doesn't feel so risky.
Yeah.
And you're moving into something that's completely controlled by the public markets.
Exactly.
So that can be intimidating. So I always recommend taking some chips off the table, saving some for your future self, setting some aside for retirement through a retirement plan like the ones that you help our business owners with every day. And really that's just kind of just getting started, like you said.
Yeah. It reminds me of our founder, John Gatewood's quote, right? That wealth is built through concentration, but preserved through diversification.
Absolutely.
And I think that fits really well here where, that retirement plan is usually that diversifying preserve vehicle, whereas the business, their baby, is where most of their wealth is going to come from. But it's important to have both, right? To your point, so that, if the business doesn't go according to plan, that they at least have assets over here on the side to preserve them. So makes sense.
So next question for you. Many small businesses start with a SEP or a simple IRA. What's the moment when a business owner realizes those plans may actually be limiting their options?
Fantastic question. And I know we have this conversation all the time. And I'm going to set some definitions first, because those terms are probably sound like gibberish to the public.
Wonderful.
Okay. So simple IRA, the name kind of gives it away. It's intended to be a simple retirement plan option. Shocker.
Simple.
Exactly. It tends to be low cost, easy to set up. The downside is you are quite limited in how much you can put in a simple. So typically a simple involves an employee contribution and an employer contribution.
Okay.
I think in 26, the limit's $17,000 for a simple for the employee. And then typically a business will match 3% of that on top of that. So, which is great. But again, you're going to hit a limit pretty quickly with that amount. And then there's a SEP IRA, which is a little bit different, where it's all employer contributions. So it's all company money. And the contributions are limited to 25% of earnings of an individual.
Okay.
The downside with that is you also have to give the same percentage in a SEP IRA to every employee that's eligible for it. So it doesn't allow any level of flexibility in different percentages or amounts to different coworkers.
And that can be a pretty large commitment.
Exactly. It could be a substantial commitment. So I always tell people, one of two things. Either you're hitting that contribution limit and you're not able to maximize your contributions the way that you want, all the way up to the IRS thresholds. That could be a lever or a sign that, hey, maybe it's time to grow and start a 401k or work your way up the ladder. Or you might say, we're starting to hire more employees. And because of that, I want more flexibility, more options, more customization. That might be a time where they graduate from a simple or a SEP to a 401k.
Okay.
So it really just depends on the goals, like on the financial planning side. Exactly. We start with why, as Simon Sinek said, is, what's it all for? What are you trying to accomplish? And then we make a recommendation for the type of retirement plan that best fits those goals. And knowing that it's not a forever decision, that they might outgrow it, and we have solutions when they do.
Okay. And of course, there's administrative fees along the way. So those are always factored in. But, the most rare form of asset is a business owner's time. So how much time does it take to create a 401k plan or a retirement plan in general? What kind of a time commitment is it?
It's a great question. And it's probably the biggest barrier that a lot of business owners have is I already have so much on my plate. I'm trying to run a successful business. We're trying to grow super fast. I don't have time to start this 401k that you want me to start, right? So I do think it can be intimidating, but part of my job is to not let it get that way. It's
Help them hit the easy button.
Exactly. I always tell them that. My job is to give you time back in your day, not add to your plate. So we're not perfect at that, but I would say that we have a really good process here at Gatewood of helping business owners do that. And I would also say a common misconception is I would say a simple is not always that simple. For example, we had a client in the restaurant business that had a simple IRA and didn't realize that they had to educate new employees as they came in about the simple IRA, had to give them annual notices. There's stuff that you still have to do even on the simple plans that made it not so simple in a lot of ways. And if you're not doing those things, there's some corrections or compliance concerns that you can run into quickly. So a lot of times in those situations, a 401k, even though there's a perception that's more complicated, more intimidating, might be a better fit for them because it's less administrative burden on the company.
Okay.
And more on a team like ours or a record keeper.
You get what you pay for.
Exactly. So you might pay more, but you might actually get more time back in your day to not have to worry about it. So I would say those are the two things is, don't let the cost or the time scare you. A lot of times that's the difference between partnering with a strong service provider and trying to do it all yourself. And then two is it's not a forever decision. We can always pivot if there's a need that changes or a goal that changes in the future. So
very helpful.
All right. Are you ready for your next one? All right. Let's keep moving. All right. When a family has a CPA, an attorney, or a financial advisor, but those professionals aren't really coordinating, never had that happen. What's the most...
Can't imagine what you're talking about.
Exactly. I never deal with that. What's the most common or most expensive mistake you tend to see?
Okay. So I don't know that there's fully a common one. but I'll give an example.
Okay.
So oftentimes, because most families have each of these individuals, and a lot of times the individuals aren't talking to each other. So we don't have, the accountant isn't coordinating with the attorney, who isn't coordinating with the advisor. And when we're working with a family, we really try to help be that quarterback to first bridge the gap and keep everyone in the know and communicate with everyone and kind of just keep everything going and organized. But also, accountants are going to have a different goal than an estate planning attorney, who's going to have a different goal than the advisor if they're not all bought in on the plan together. So for an example, if a lot of times for our families at the end of the year, we'll be looking at what's their income for the year. Are we a little bit lower on the income tax bracket? Does it make sense to do a Roth conversion this year? And so those types of things, especially a Roth conversion, often if the accountant just sees the Roth conversion, they'll go, why did we generate more in taxes than we needed to, right? Because you're prepaying your taxes. You're doing it in a very thoughtful, pruned way in a lower income tax year. But if the accountant doesn't know that that's the plan, they might say, well, we just incurred more income tax than we needed.
Right.
But there's a plan behind it. There's a reason. We're planning for the future and looking ahead. And so really just that coordination, because you may make a recommendation as the advisor to do a Roth conversion, and then the accountant comes back and says, we shouldn't have
Right. What are you
generated
doing,
those taxes. What are you doing?
Exactly.
And so then the client gets confused, like, oh, well, which one's right? Maybe I shouldn't have done it. So just keeping everyone communicating together and on the same team is not something you see very often. But we try really hard to make sure that we're implementing it that way.
It makes sense. You used a term that maybe not a lot of people know. Can you explain Roth conversion?
Yeah.
I know we do that all the time,
Absolutely.
But it can be confusing. Tell me about that.
So a Roth conversion, so all of your traditional IRA assets that may be generated from your 401k, you've been saving on a pre-tax basis. So the government has not taken any income taxes out of those yet. So every dollar that comes out of your traditional IRA is taxed at ordinary income, which is likely the highest tax bracket that you'll pay. And so really trying to smooth out. So we see this a lot for clients who retire before their required minimum distribution age. So the required minimum distribution is, like I said, we've been saving into a pre-tax vehicle. We have not paid income taxes on it. And so at some point, Uncle Sam does require his cut.
Dang it.
I know. And so it's coming. And at some point, you have to start taking money out. So the IRS says right now it's age 73. And it goes up to age 75 in 2035, I believe it is. But at that point, when you hit required minimum distributions, you have to take a certain amount out each year. And so you have to, it's based on your age and the balance of the portfolio as of 12/31 the prior year. So you have to take the funds out each year. They're all taxed at ordinary income. And so some clients retire a lot younger than their required minimum distribution age. And maybe they don't have as much income outside of, maybe they're getting a small pension, they're getting your Social Security, but it's definitely a lower income year than what they're used to in their working years. Right. And it's also a lower income year than what they're anticipating once the required minimum distributions start. So we're really thoughtful in years that maybe don't have a ton of investment gains or a lot of investment income, then we'll convert some of the IRA to Roth. And that way it serves two purposes. So we're smoothing out the tax brackets, but we're also lowering what we have to take out of the IRA in the future.
Got it.
Because the Roth IRA grows tax deferred, tax free likely. And so, because it is after tax money. So
got it. That makes sense. Yeah. Roth conversions 101. I like it.
Roth conversions 101.
I like it. Thank you. That's helpful.
You're welcome. I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
From the retirement plan side, how often do you see situations where the timing of a decision, whether it's starting a plan, changing ownership structure, or making a big contribution, ends up having major tax consequences that the business owner didn't realize?
Ooh, can I go into story time?
Yeah,
okay.
Always.
How much time do you have?
Unlimited.
Okay. Well, so this came up fairly recently where there was this big change and all these different variables were impacting it. And what happened is we had a client that was a C Corp historically, and I'll explain what that is. And they were changing to an S Corp, and they changed mid-year, which meant the tax filing deadlines for that company changed. So a C Corp, typically reserved for bigger companies over 100 employees, not always, but typically. The downside of a C Corp is they're double taxed, meaning
Okay.
the business is taxed and then all the employees, including the
We don't want to be
executives.
taxed twice.
Exactly. We don't like double tax. We like single taxed. An S Corp is typically reserved for companies under 100 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And the benefit of an S Corp is you're avoiding that double taxation, where generally the partners or the owners of the company are passed through, meaning that the business taxes and their individual earning taxes are all on their tax returns. So they're taxed one time versus the 2 times. There's also benefits with that because an S Corp allows them to avoid payroll taxes on the distributions they take out of the business.
Okay.
So think of an S Corp where you would set up 2 buckets or streams of income. You'd have the W-2 that just has to be reasonable based on the role that they're in, and that is a key requirement, and you would work with us and their accountant more than likely to arrive at that. And then there's the distribution part. And the distribution, because it's not a W-2, avoids payroll taxes, which is tax savings to the owner of the business.
Okay.
So that's why they were making the change for those tax benefits. But what they didn't think about, and what we collectively didn't do a good job of planning for and communicating, is how that would impact their company retirement contributions into the 401k. So generally, you have all the way up to the business's tax filing deadline to make those company contributions for it to apply to that tax year.
Okay.
So this company was used to extending, they would extend every year. So as a C Corp, that meant as long as they got their contribution in before October 15th.
Okay. So it follows the regular extension that we're used to.
Exactly. They're in the clear. Well, what they didn't factor in is our new deadline extended is 9/15, but they still had on their calendar that they were going to make that deposit in early October.
S Corps is earlier.
Exactly. So you can see where this is going, where that contribution they ended up making, unfortunately, did not apply to that prior tax year. The deduction actually hit the current tax year, which was not ideal. Right?
Or the goal.
Exactly, not the goal. Learning opportunity. We learned our lesson, but that's a great example of just there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of decisions that were made a lot earlier that impacted the retirement plan that they maybe didn't think of when they were making those decisions. And there's a lot of things like that. So that's just one example that comes to mind.
Timing's important.
Exactly. Another common example is, let's say a business has a 401k, but it's not called a safe harbor 401k. And I'll explain what that is. So what is safe harbor? That's a funny term. It just means that they don't have to go through certain compliance tests the same way that a non-safe harbor plan would have to do. Meaning it gives the business and the owners a lot more flexibility as far as contributions. So a lot of times if you're not a safe harbor plan, if it fails that testing, the owners or the highly compensated employees can unfortunately get refunds back at the end of the year. So that, from their point of view, they're like, the whole reason I have a plan is so I can save tax deferred and build up a retirement balance. And then at the end of the year, you have to tell them you have to take some of that back. They don't like that message.
Don't want to do that.
No, exactly. You know the type. They would not like that. So you set up a safe harbor to avoid that. A lot of those issues go away when you do a safe harbor plan. But to get back to the question, the timing of that.
Okay.
To make that change, you have to have a safe harbor plan in existence for at least 3 months of a calendar year. So in layman's terms.
October 1.
Exactly. You're smart. Well done, Nina. You passed the test. But you can't plan to do that the last week of September.
Not overnight.
Shocker, right? There are employee notice requirements. You have to send out a notice to everybody that's going to be eligible within 30 days. A lot of the providers, the custodian, the record keeper, a TPA, if you work with that, typically require that they know that you're going to do that by early August. So a good 60 days, like I said earlier, to do that type of transition to ensure that you have enough time to do that smoothly. So again, that's just yet another example where it often takes longer to plan for exactly than a business owner might be thinking. So,
Got it.
Yeah. Nina, our
Micah,
first podcast.
we did it.
Thanks for doing that with me. That was really fun. And to our audience, if you enjoyed this content, I would encourage you to subscribe to learn more about future episodes as we release them. Please also visit our website at gatewoodwealth.com.